Nutritionally, well, the thyroid needs protein, and the thyroid and the adrenals need fat. Cortisol needs fat. So if you look at any kind of, there's a steroid hormone cascade, and now they also have one that's cholesterol / LDL. So doctors are screaming at you to lower your LDL. No, you need your LDL because that makes all the steroid hormones, and the poor liver is trying to make cholesterol, which is supposed to build your, regenerate brain tissue and myelin sheaths and things like that. But all the hormones are made out of the fat we eat, synthesized in the adrenals, and only if an egg is fertilized is it necessary in the ovaries. So for thyroid, you absolutely need iodine, because our polluted world today, it's impossible to get adequate iodine from our food. So it's an essential nutrient. It's the only thing I recommend that it's not food. I mean, it is, because our food doesn't have it, then you need to eat fat. So I don't know where you are, where someone is on what they say is their journey, but I certainly hit a wall when I hit 52. And that's where I went carnivore at 52 when I went into menopause. So I also think adolescents need a lot of fat. So women need 40% more iodine and 40% more thyroid hormone during adolescence and during pregnancy. So those are the things that if a woman hasn't had it during adolescence, issues will definitely come up later. Okay, so we used to say in the 80s you could top up a sufficient system with 2 drops. That would be the old Jean Lugol from, he invented in 1827. It's a 15% solution. People who villainize iodine made people scared, so they called it the 5% solution to make it seem smaller. So basically it's 15% potassium iodide, 10% potassium iodide, 5% elemental iodine. Has nothing to do with radioactive iodine, which is an entirely different thing that they shoot in you to kill your thyroid. The world is a lot more polluted than it was in the 80s. There are forever chemicals, there are phthalates. What we used to worry about, just halides and bromide, which is in I get probably my chair has, the cushioning on my chair has bromide. It's everywhere. But today we also have these other chemicals that are impossible for us to escape. So that's why I usually recommend a minimum of 4 drops of 5% now. Fat, because that's what all those steroid hormones are made out of. And we can replenish when we exercise, we are using a lot of adrenaline, right? After 15 minutes of endurance, I know if it's not weight training, if your heart rate is high for more than 15 minutes, you will go into a fight or flight state. So you're using cortisol to address that fight or flight state. If you don't replenish that fat, you will have issues, cortisol issues. So no, I don't. It's a good sign to be hungry in the morning. It's a healthy sign. You don't have to have what the Italians call the English breakfast. You don't have to have like sausages and eggs and stuff like that. I just have decaf and a bunch of butter. I do, though, have a small piece of jerky. If I do have the waves are bigger and I'm going out paddleboarding, and my heart rate's going to be higher handling those waves, I'll have a little bit of protein. But usually it's just decaf and butter. I'll have lunch and then I'll have dinner. If I have a lot of clients throughout the day, I may run and get a piece of jerky because my brain is on fire. So I need to give myself something during the day. So I believe it's snacking too, if it's fat or protein. At high fat carnivore, you are promoting autophagy. And guess what regulates autophagy? T3, thyroid hormone. Okay, so a lot of people aren't or can't in the morning. So when you're sleeping, you're not eating. Your liver is going to produce blood sugar for you to get through the night. I usually say measure ketones an hour after you've had a fatty meal, because in the morning they'll be low and blood sugar will usually be higher than you expect it to be on a carnivore high fat keto diet, because that liver has been producing sugar throughout the night. You want those ketones to be used. They have to be in circulation to give you energy, right? So you want to measure when you've replenished them. Your immune system is looking for viruses and proteins, viruses and bacteria, right? So these are made out of proteins. So gluten can have an effect. Dairy proteins can have an effect. That's why I don't usually recommend the white dairy like mozzarella and kefir and things like that, because there's a ton of milk proteins in them. Butter has a teeny tiny amount of milk protein. However, someone who's very sensitive has high food sensitivities, their immune system is hyper vigilant, may react to the butter. Very few people do, but some do. I would say lamb and beef tallow, but I would also further investigate if that person has amenorrhea, they're probably hypothyroid, or they need a bunch of iodine. Well, they initially rise because maybe you're eating higher fat. So triglycerides are basically unused fat. I see people, so initially they'll rise because all of it, if you've been eating low fat for decades, they're definitely going to go up because all of a sudden there's more fat. They're made out of, they're fatty acids. They're basically energy that hasn't turned into ATP yet. If it remains, and it may be a transition period, if they remain high, there is an issue with your turning those triglycerides into fatty acids into ATP. I want women between 220 and 320. If it's 500, and their triglycerides are over 100, and it stays that way, I would say look into thyroid function. All right, well, first I want to address the skin issue. So loose skin is related to low B12, low zinc, and low thyroid. So mommies who have tummy tucks after they've had babies, if the skin is not elastic enough to go back to the way it was before, that's often a thyroid issue. I have patients coming to me with, this skin is not taut enough, or the skin has to have a certain amount of elasticity. Ligaments can also become too stretchy. So stretchy skin, stretchy ligaments, uterine prolapse, things like that. Basically, it's not because you had a couple of kids, it's because you are probably hypothyroid because your ligaments have become too lax and they don't have the stretchiness again. I recommend weight training, definitely. Not cardio, because if you had cortisol issues before, having vaginal dryness would mean you had cortisol issues, would mean you had high cortisol. So I, on a 76 something fat to 24 protein, built 3 kilo in muscle in 2 months. I was just paddleboarding. My husband had to rehabilitate his knee, so he joined a gym, so I did too. And I'm 60, and I did it on a high fat diet. So it's possible. Fewer reps, higher weight. Absolutely.
I like 3. Less is more, just 3 reps heavy, and then
they're trying to get into cardio.
I think that's the biggest mistake, especially our endurance athletes listening tend to do cardio for training for races, and then they stop racing, and then they're just still doing the cardio, not focusing on the strength part. And as we age, I think that's huge.
Okay, so a salivary cortisol test, because if you have cortisol issues, your body will be in a fight or flight, either low or high. Your body will be in a hypersympathetic state, and hence it thinks it's in danger. Hence, it will hold on to weight in order to give you the calories to run like hell from danger. So it doesn't know that you're under stress. It doesn't know that you're possibly abusing your cortisol system. It just knows that you're in a fight or flight state, which is also inflammatory. And when that is turned off or addressed, weight usually comes off. Thyroid is also important to test because the thyroid regulates metabolism. So the person who had 700 total cholesterol and 170 or 200 triglycerides, that person who was a patient had a thyroid issue. And as soon as we addressed the thyroid function, the cholesterol dropped and the triglycerides dropped. So the inability to metabolize energy in itself is a thyroid, a hypothyroid symptom.
So their follow-up questions were, how long on carnivore should one give to start experience changes in hormone balance?
So the endocrine system uses a 30-day cycle for both men and women. So definitely give, a month or so. Not fasting, weight training. I would say, well, there is no premenopause because you are either fertile or you're not. So perimenopause was invented in the 80s, doesn't exist. The symptoms that people have are related to cortisol issues. So I would say, again, a 75-25 ratio of fat to protein for somebody who doesn't have huge inflammatory issues. Women, we evolved to look down and say, oh, at 18, not 12 or 11. Oh, I'm bleeding. There you go. I got my period. And then when we are, however old we are in our 50s, we look down and we no longer have our period. We're not supposed to have PMS or whatever they call it now. We're not supposed to have any symptoms. This is a natural occurrence that is not supposed to come with pain or issues of any sort. The child to fertile biological being to incredible older woman who, like the orcas, leads all the pods to the hunting grounds. There are libraries of knowledge. So
Yeah.
older women ensure that grandchildren, the species survives.
Some people
No.
have suggested carb intake before and during cycle.
Yes. Okay. So I don't agree with that. I have the book that those papers, they're papers in the 80s. They put everybody on an 800 calorie diet and their T3 levels went down. Of course, their T3 levels went down. They're not eating enough food. Your body will not make energy, will not make tissue if you are not giving it the nutrients in order to do so. That's a starvation state. You don't need carbs for anything.
So high intensity exercise or anything, you don't need.
All right. So if you're Zach Zimmer, right? Or Zach
Bitter, Zach
Bitter. Yeah. If you're running 100 miles, if you run 100 miles and don't stop, I don't think you can quickly enough metabolize, he eats what, a banana or something, or, I mean, I don't think anybody should be doing that. So yes, definitely. If you're working out to that intensity, you may need to have some carbs across the finish line. Personally, your cortisol levels are a mess. Yeah, I used to compete a lot in Kung Fu, and a woman just asked me today, why don't you join the team and race paddleboarding? I don't want to. I had enough stress. I love paddleboarding, but I don't want to have the stress of competition. I know that I would be a better paddleboarder if I had a team to train with. I don't have the time, and I have healed my cortisol levels from fighting in Kung Fu and going to lots of tournaments and stuff like that.
Is it normal problem for large weight fluctuations at 24 BMI now and can't seem to hold it there or get the last 10 pounds off at age 62?
I gotta say that all body scans are kind of rigged. So I wouldn't trust a DEXA scan or a Frax or anything anyway, because if you read my book, I document how they were using the statistics to measure 50-year-old women. They were using the bone density numbers for 30-year-old women. So not fair.
So managing stress and lifting weights and not doing excessive cardio.
When your body decides you're a fertile being, it will not allow you to go to extremes, because you are by default a biological fertile being. So at 15, it might work for a while, but when you hit, definitely women who have babies know this, right? You can't fast, you can't starve, you can't allow, your body won't allow you, it will make you gain weight if you starve or fast, because by default, it will protect your ability to be fertile. I don't know if you've seen the cortisol curve, right? It starts producing cortisol at 2 a.m, and it has this lovely peak at between 6 and 8, and then it just gently goes down until 2 o'clock in the morning until it starts again. So the apex is between 6 and 8. That's when you should be working out, because that's when you have plenty of cortisol to handle all that cortisol and adrenaline you're using by working out. So I would say it's safe to say maybe it's okay to work out till like noon. After that, I've had people who I stopped them from running at night and switched it up, because if you look at the curve, when your cortisol is low at night in the evening, when melatonin is supposed to be produced and sun is going down, you're supposed to be getting ready to chill out and go to bed, and you end up jacking up your cortisol with adrenaline. That's not a good thing. Yeah. And the food part, again, in order to create that beautiful cortisol peak, you need cholesterol. So that's why I have the high fat in the morning, and I recommend high fat in the morning. And I would I would never go paddleboarding without having had a bunch of fat. But congested, okay, so the gallbladder is a reserve of bile. A lot of my patients who have had hypothyroid or are hypothyroid come to me minus their gallbladders, because they had gallstones, because the bile salts were not properly, either they weren't eating fat and they didn't use the bile, or they weren't able to metabolize the fat that they were eating. So I would always, I mean, a hypothyroid gut isn't going to have any HCl, lipase, or bile enough anyway. The liver makes less. It's not so much the liver is sluggish, it is that the signals to the liver are sluggish. So I recommend, definitely, I'm not a big supplement person, but for that transition period of high fat, I recommend ox bile. You guys in the States have Lipogold, which is the highest content of lipase of any supplement I've ever seen. And hydrochloric acid for the protein, because we can basically metabolize carbohydrates on our tongue with our saliva. That's all it needs to break down carbohydrates. But the food we need, the fat and the protein, actually needs adequate, robust digestive mechanics. And if there's Hashimoto's, then there's thyroid issue. So probably low thyroid is causing that deficiency of digestive mechanics.
So anything on apple cider vinegar or bitters before you eat, would that help?
That comes from plants.
Yeah.
We don't need it. It's just plant stuff. Liver flush, right?
Yeah.
Basically, the famous
olive
liver
oil.
flush. Epsom salts, and then the olive oil. You're basically shocking your liver to shake it so that it dumps crap out, right? And same with the gallbladder flush. You make it go into a spasm, right, to dump stuff out. Not the nicest thing to do to your organs. Used to recommend it. I think that if we're eating a high-fat carnivore diet and our endocrine function is working optimally, we don't need to shock our organs into dumping crap that they have. Those things will just naturally be, just like a disc, a protruding disc. If you remove the compression from this spine, the disc is absorbed again. And or if you give iodine to somebody with fibroids or nodules, they'll be sucked back in. So the body, as you said, is wonderful, and it will eat up the stuff that's not supposed to be there. We need a minimum, right, to just be alive, right? So it depends also upon your activity level to some extent. I mean, 70-20 for me is an anti-inflammatory protocol. So it will, as long as the person is in ketosis, then they are reducing inflammation and therefore improving their health. So weight loss is not, I address health. Weight loss comes after the body is healthy and everything is balanced and there are no deficiencies. I think nuts are evil because of the phytic acid, just like I think beans are evil because of the lectins. I recommend carnivore because it doesn't have any anti-nutrients. So we do know that some nuts are more evil than others. So the most evil is almond, which a lot of keto recipes have, almond flour. The least evil is macadamia because it has obviously fewer lectins and a higher amount of fat in it. Peanuts are legumes. Cashews are legumes. Again, that means they're beans, so they're full of lectins. I would not, if you're trying to make any healthy changes, I wouldn't add nuts.
How do you know if you're reactive to them? Do you find people have certain symptoms if they don't do well with the lectins, the anti-nutrients?
It could be anything. It could be anything. You remove something for a couple of weeks and then you add it back in. And if things got better and they get worse when you add it back in, that's kind of how you know.
Yeah. Elimination.
Absolutely. I want to be as healthy as I can be. My son did it because at 35, he had arthritis. He's a musician, so can't have arthritis at 35, but he was eating a lot of lentils because he was a starving artist. If you are exercising and you have that carb, that is not going to be inflammatory to you because you have adequate glucagon levels and you are not going to spike insulin. However, your cortisol levels may be high, and that will cause gluconeogenesis by itself. I don't think any allergy test is nearly as accurate as an elimination protocol or something like measuring your blood sugar if the food causes inflammation. However, if you eat that food every day, your immune system won't be able to react properly. So you're going to have to eliminate it for a while before you can have a proper immune response. People say, earlier you had somebody say the food is boring. It's giving me nutrition to do all this stuff that I like to do. So To me, it's just nutrition. I understand the mindset because I think I was there too. I wanted to, win at tournaments, forums, and I wanted to, be able to fight the guy who was bigger than me. But the thing is that I also had a crash from that, and I stopped exercising for a year, and that's basically what I had to do in order to be able to do what I do now and feel as good as I feel now. And if you don't sleep, you're overdoing it. That's definitely, sleep is like the first thing that's going to go.
Yeah.
Good fat is good for women because women are always told not to eat fat because we have to be not look voluptuous. Women are not supposed to eat meat. Women and all over the world and children are iron deficient because they don't eat meat. Most cultures don't give women meat, etc. Blah, blah, blah. It just goes on forever. My book is about, basically tells you the history of how medicine has approached women through history. So I chose for the Audible, I chose a woman who didn't sound like she was in her 50s purposely because I do want to write. I want younger women to understand this too. And I talk about younger women, my own history in my book. All women need to understand that we are fertile beings and all those steroid hormones are made out of fat. I mean, since the Ansel Keys report, they can't really go back now. There's a huge industry built on it. So, you'd have egg on your face. They would have egg on their face if all of a sudden they said, oops, we were totally wrong. Yes, books on Amazon. It's going to come out in a few different languages pretty soon. Eliz Bright at Eliz@elizbright.com. I'm in Italy and I don't like the meat here, so we order Irish ribeye. We also just got some Irish lamb. And my daughter had a baby 6 months ago. We were there in Scotland. We had the best lamb ever, and we were just loving that lamb. My husband is happy eating some chicken. He roasts chicken with like a stick of butter. I just do better with beef. I think it's the iron content. I love my beef jerky. I make beef jerky out of skirt steak, it's called in English, skirt steak, hanger steak, very fatty. It's the leftover of the meat that I make from the beef ribs where I make my tallow bars. So they're mostly fat, mostly tallow, and a little bit of crunchy fried meat.